So
Well, we ask all our guests to complete this sentence, and I feel like you're going to be as well placed as anyone to complete it. It's life is ... and then finish the sentence. So I'll throw the challenge at you. Life is.
life is short. Life is short.
No one tells you what you're supposed to do.
Sean Purcell lives a life of purpose, but it wasn't always that way. On July the 13th, 2014, Sean was jogging at his local beach in Torquay. He collapsed with a heart attack and was clinically dead. That day was far from an ending. It was really where it all started. Sean, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Scotty. Very exciting to be here on LifeChanger podcast.
And when you hear July the 13th, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, it's so much a part of who I am now as a person. I suppose gratitude is the first thing. Once you push past all of the, like I talk about it a lot, so it's easy for it to become just another day. But when I really get time to sit down and think about it, disbelief is the very first thing. Enormous gratitude is the next thing. And then it just fills me with a sense of purpose and drive off the back of that. And we're going to find out why soon.
So let's park that incredible, significant day, and let's go back before that. I want to know, what was Sean Purcell like as a husband and a father before that day?
I think I was doing my best with what I had at the time, Scotty. I reckon I was susceptible to, I was highly anxious human to start with. Like I think...
Always? Like when you were growing up as a young guy?
Yeah, definitely. I think, always... anxiety was probably something I didn't understand at all. So it really was a big part of my personality. It had flip sides too, because it drove me to do things that I wasn't usually comfortable doing. But it was also meant that I was probably a bit of an arsehole to be around sometimes, which, on reflection, that's one thing that is really prevalent with me, and what I've been working on to be the massive change since July 13, 2014.
If you were measuring how well you were maximising your opportunity at life prior to that day, where would you rate it out of 100? What would your measurement have been?
Gosh, it would have been sub 50 for sure. Without exaggeration. I think, if I look at the skill sets that I've got, and that I have always had, that have been innate, not necessarily the ones that I've built, and I look back at whether they were utilised or not, they definitely weren't the majority of the time. I look at opportunities that were offered to me that were squandered for whatever reason, and it's really easy to beat yourself up about that sort of stuff, isn't it? But I definitely blew more opportunities than I took advantage of back before that day. That's for sure.
There's a great quote that says, nothing is the worst thing that can happen to us. Something significant happened to you on that day, on July the 13th. You just want to talk us through what I'm sure probably just started as a normal day.
Yeah, well, it did. I suppose I won't give you the 45-minute version, but I'll just breeze through it. So I was sick for weeks. I'd been sick with what I thought was man flu for a couple of weeks, and it was really rocking me. I'd been to the doctors. I'd been on medication. I'd missed a decent portion of the previous week of work, and nothing was working. So in my infinite wisdom, I decided to try and sweat it out. And so I hit the local beach down here in Torquay, White's Beach, and proceeded to sort of go for a run with the intent to sweat it out and have a sleep in the arvo and be rigid-edged by Monday. But what I didn't understand at the time was that it wasn't man flu. It was actually a high-grade lung infection that I'd been battling with that we later found out should have had me hospitalised just on that alone. And what that had done, increasing my heart rate, had started to attack the wall of my heart. So I went into sudden cardiac arrest, which basically means my heart was fine. I didn't have a heart attack per se. My heart was fully functioning, but it was just filling up with blood and couldn't evacuate that blood fast enough. And my heart stopped beating. I dropped dead. I was running right on the water's edge. I veered into the water, fell face first, and that was it. Lights out. And what happened next to ensure that obviously I didn't stay dead, the story itself is absolutely miraculous.
Tell us about some of those people that you talk about, fate, luck, destiny, whatever you want to call it, but there were just some people that turned up at the right time.
Yeah, we've calculated about 10 points of action that happened on the day that ensured that I was alive. And if one of those things didn't happen, I wouldn't have survived, which just gives me goosebumps just thinking about it still today, 6 years later. So it was the first sunny day in weeks. So the beach was full of people, and the calibre of people there is just absolutely remarkable. There were 10 people in the end that came to my aid. Some of them were ex-nurses. Some of them had medical backgrounds in the army. All of them had CPR training. One of them was a third-year med student. And basically they went to work on me with CPR straight away. They realised within about 2 minutes that I was completely non-responsive. So I wasn't breathing and my heart wasn't beating. But they just kept working on me. They put together a mini task force. They were all strangers as well, bar 2 or 3 of them. They didn't know each other. So just that executive decision-making at the snap of a fingers when it's a Sunday morning, so your head's probably around walking the dog and going to get a coffee at the local cafe. But they pulled into action and it was just absolutely phenomenal. They were told straight off the bat that they were going to get no assistance for 45 minutes. So there were no ambulances available. The helicopter was out in Geelong. So I can't imagine what that would have felt like, being told that you're all alone for 45 minutes.
Have you thought about the probability of someone being there, but even just the right group of people being there?
Yeah, I do all the time. 2 things I think about regularly. If I had gone on the Saturday morning, it was about 6 degrees and howling rain and no one was on the beach. The second thing was that another run that I did was along a creek here in Torquay. That was my other go-to. The only thing I can think of is that I would have been too sick to put my shoes on that morning to go to the creek. And I was running barefoot on the beach. So that's probably why I made that choice. So yeah, I think about that all the time. And every time I go for a run now along that creek, I think, if I had dropped here, no one would have found me for 2 hours. So
during that period, I mean, am I right to say you were clinically dead at a point there?
Yeah, clinically dead for 45 minutes. That's the feedback that we're getting at the moment. So essentially they were breathing for me and they were pumping my heart for me through CPR the whole time. One of the women that turned up, her name was Lee Bartlett, and she taught CPR at the Janjuk Surf Lifesaving Club. So she took control of the situation and micromanaged every minute of that sort of a 30-minute period in there. So, got the technique perfect with the people doing it, got other people over to help out and assist. She was absolutely unbelievable. She's my guardian angel. And a number of people have said if she wasn't in control, they're not sure they would have been able to keep going. So there's leadership skills 101 right there.
So this amazing group of people are basically keeping you alive, at what stage does your family know that something is going on? Kelly, your beautiful wife, at what stage is she brought into this whole incredible situation?
Well, I snuck out of bed early, so it would have been about 7 a.m. And left. She didn't know that I'd left the house. And I'd taken her little yap yap dog, Abby, with me. So the poor little thing had been watching people attack me for the last 45 minutes. Right at the end of that.
So the dog was looking after you?
Yeah, the poor thing was, that just trying to stave off all of these people that were attacking me. So it was about the 35-minute mark. They realised my heart wasn't going to start at all. So they had to source a defibrillator. And they popped that down. There was a med student that was really confident. I was soaking wet, so they were a little bit worried that the water was going to act as a conduit and electrocute everyone. There was a med student there that assured everyone it'd be fine. They got my heart started with that, which was the first time my heart was able to beat by itself in that sort of 35 to 45-minute period.
Amazing.
You can imagine how that made them feel.
Yeah,
that would have been
incredible.
Unbelievable. So they single-handedly got my heart started without medical intervention, from professionals. And 5 minutes later, the helicopter arrived and the paramedics arrived. And the first thing they did was congratulate everyone, ask them to stick around. And then one of the paramedics said, "Can someone get rid of that frigging dog that keeps trying to attack everyone?" So, there must have been a dog whisperer in the crowd, and she picked Abby up and checked the dog tag, and it was my wife's name and number on there. And they called Cal and said, "Look, your husband's been in an accident on White's Beach. Get down here straight away." And then hung up on her. And it was a private number, so she couldn't call back.
Oh, no.
And she thought, great, this guy must have bloody gone for a run, been bitten by a dog, and now he's having a sook on the sands, and she's going to have to come down and get me. So she was pretty nonchalant when she got in the car, and not too worried until she got to the beach and saw the helicopter and thought, this is a lot more serious than what I thought. And then she got to the actual sand, and it's a bit of a hike to get through the sand dunes down to White's Beach. And yeah, she got there, and then she knew that I was in a lot of trouble. I was unconscious, surrounded by paramedics, and yeah, she was told, "Look, we don't know what's happened, but he's been worked on for the last 45 minutes, and we're about to put him in a chopper." So that was it.
So, okay, let's fast forward now. You're in the hospital. What were the expectations at that point? What had Kelly been told? What were the doctors saying to your family? Yeah, I'm just really fascinated to know how they were being presented with the facts at that point.
I think the first thing that happened, I was stuck in emergency for an hour. And then I managed to get the last bed in ICU upstairs at the Geelong Hospital. Kelly arrived, my mum and dad arrived from Melbourne. My two brothers drove down from Melbourne, and my two sons, Kai and BJ, were brought in by their mum, my ex-wife, Tess. And they were all put in a room and basically said, "Look, good news is his heart's beating by itself, almost by itself without assistance."
Yeah,
and
positive.
Yeah, that's all she needed to hear. She didn't need to hear anything else after that. Bad news is there's no brain activity whatsoever. We can't see any sort of activity that will ensure that he's going to wake up from this. So that was the news, that was basically it. I was in a coma. There was no brain activity whatsoever, which would make sense with having insufficient blood flow to your brain for 45 minutes. And Cal was told, "Look, you're going to have to think about life for him after this," which meant eventually think about switching the machine off and allow him to die, or do you think about what it's like to live with someone with high-grade brain damage? I can't imagine what that would have been like at the moment. So that was it. That was a story for the next 5 days, Scotty. Every day, Cal would go to bed and just wait for the phone to call. and then come in and sit with me every day. And it was just the same story for 5 days for all of them. So, yeah, I made life tough.
Hell of a time for the family and obviously the kids. So on the 5th day, what happened? Because something completely out of the box occurred, something that still surprises many who know this story. The chances of this actually happening just seem so incredibly remote.
Yeah, well, my fate was basically sealed. The cardiologists, the neurologists, and the ward doctors were all in agreement that this wasn't going anywhere good. And they kept trying to wake me up, and there was just completely non-responsive. But on day 5, Cal got in, and all of the doctors was sitting around my bed, and one of them turned around and gave her the thumbs up. And she'd come over and my eyes were open, and they couldn't believe it. And they quickly whisked her away and said, "Look, his eyes are open, but he's not tracking anyone in the room. He's not with us. He's just sort of got his eyes open." And again, she didn't care. She just needed to know there was some momentum there. There was some progress. And then, she went to bed a lot happier that night. Day 2 of being awake, I started tracking people throughout the room. Day 3, I started talking gibberish, and they just couldn't believe, that I was.
Kel might have thought you were back to normal at that point.
Yeah, definitely. My two sons did, that's for sure. They thought, "Yep, this is about right." And then, day 4, I started putting little sentences together, and that's the bit that really freaked out the neurologists, because, all data shows that after 3 minutes of insufficient blood flow to your brain, you're essentially going to be brain damaged or brain dead. And they just couldn't believe that. First of all, they were questioning the story, that it was that long, and secondly, they couldn't understand why it happened. And it came back to the fact that I fell into the water when I was running and when I went into cardiac arrest, and that I was resuscitated on freezing cold sand.
Yeah, right.
I was brave the whole time. And what that had done had stopped my brain from swelling throughout that period. So it essentially put me on ice throughout that, which was the perfect situation for me to be in resuscitation, which freaked them out. They couldn't believe it. And within a week of that happening, I'd gotten out of bed and walked myself to the toilet with a Zimmer frame. And then 2 weeks later, I was in the cardiac ward, and I'd had a defibrillator put in my chest, and I was talking and walking and sleeping properly, and neurological testing 3 months later came back, which again was probably one of the greatest days of my life, with 0 brain damage, which I couldn't believe. I was,
a million to one doesn't even seem close to doing it justice.
No.
It's a phenomenal story and a phenomenal occurrence of events to actually get you to that point. I'm sure the rehab, took some time from that point. I'm really interested to know, you hear a lot of stories about people who have been through, such a traumatic, significant, life-changing event. At what stage post this event did you feel different or changed, or did you feel any different or changed?
Straight away, as soon as I started waking up in the hospital, and again, neurologically, I had a little bit of memory loss immediately, but then we've now found that there's been quite a bit of memory loss. But so I didn't understand and remember the incident at all, but I did understand the story, and as we picked it apart, I got to know it more and more intimately. And I just knew pretty much straight away, I knew every time I opened my eyes that I was a very, very lucky man. And from that point on, I couldn't afford to squander even a day, regardless.
And you felt that straight away?
Yeah, in hospital, I felt that. I didn't want to go to sleep some nights in hospital. I'd feared that I wouldn't wake up. And I remember in the mornings just waking up, and the same thing happens, and it's just innate in me now. I put my feet on the ground. I just thank God that I'm alive. I'm just like, I've got the next 24 hours, and that'll do me, which is the biggest gift out of all of this. Talk about squandering opportunities previous to this incident. I haven't squandered one since, because I know that every single day is a new opportunity to just live that 24 hours, and just how lucky we are to be here.
And you've turned that event into a life mantra with a life of purpose. What does that mean, and how are you taking that experience now? And I guess you've been through your own hero's journey. You've faced an amazing challenge. You've had to slay the demons, just a unique circumstance. And how are you now bringing back that experience to others?
Well, it started by accident with the way that I found the people who saved my life. I suppose for that 6 months, I was really, really sick. Post that, I'd inherited the body of an 85-year-old, which had frustrations, obviously, and I had memory issues, but the innate part was that gift I had every morning of waking up and just being so grateful to be alive, so grateful for such a small thing that we take for granted. And one thing that was missing was those people. I wanted to let them know. I'd had rumours that some of them didn't know I'd survived. Some of them thought I was brain damaged. A few of them saw me shuffling down the street and thought that I was incapacitated. So I needed to let them know. So I quickly put a post on Facebook, and that went viral. That ended up being shared 188,000 times, went all over the world. I was contacted by every media agency the next day. And the project on Channel 10 shared my story and allowed me to meet these people face to face for the first time. So that was another really strange part of my life. But what that led to was a speaking agency seeing it on TV and asking me to come in for a meeting. And they asked would I consider putting together a talk about this, and share the basic premise of a life of purpose is to try and get people to understand how precious life is without having to go through what I've been through to get to the other side. I haven't cracked the code yet. I haven't worked out the formula, and it's been evolving over 5 or 6 years. But my mission is to try and get people to walk out of that 60-minute talk and go, right, I feel the same way. I'm grateful for everything in my life. And you've been working with kids in Uganda through the Cotton On Foundation. Yeah. Obviously through the LifeChanger Foundation where we meet, you're working with a lot of teenagers and mentors. How are you succinctly trying to give them that message, really to make them feel what you felt? I think the first step is for people to understand, instead of waking up and bitching and moaning about what isn't, think about what is. Like, really strip everything back and think, what do you have that enables you to be the best version of you? So that's the first thing. What is there? And then what's necessary is the next bit. So what's in your life that's necessary for you to get by? If you've got a shit job that you hate, it's necessary at this moment. You have to pay the bills. But within that, what can you change? What can you alter? And it's usually your mindset to make that a little bit more bearable. Next thing is what's unnecessary. What's the things in your life that can just go straight away? People, things, unnecessary expenses. So I think
what did you let go, Sean? What did you let go?
I let go a lot of mainly beliefs about myself. So I started learning as much as I could about where the anxiety in me sat, and it was usually around the way that I looked at myself and the way that I thought about myself. But it was a really weird thing, Scotty. I was sitting there going, well, there's got to be a reason for this happening, for me for my life to be spared, I started seeing on the news every night athletes dying of sudden cardiac arrest in the middle of a race. Mm-hmm. Ex-footballers and stuff like that. And you think, well, there's got to be a reason why I'm alive. So I can't be that bad of a human being. There's got to be some potential in me. So I started letting go. Apologising for who I was as a person was a big one. All of these regrets and all of these behaviours that weren't in line with my moral code, and they all went straight away. Ways of speaking, ways of treating other people, that all had to dissipate, and I started feeling lighter straight away. I had to let go of a lot of people as well that in my life that were cancerous. Yep. And that weren't on the same journey that I wanted to be on, which was that must be really hard for a lot of people. And I started putting a lot of other people in check too that I wanted in my life, but saying, look, we can't behave like this. Yeah, that's things like that. I could probably go on, I could probably write a list of 100 things that I let go. But what it did is it just freed up so much space. And before anything came into that space, it had to be really, really considered and really thought through. And, there had to be a prerequisite as to why is it coming into this space? What purpose does it serve? And how's it going to help myself, but more importantly, how's it going to help other people? So
we ask all our guests to complete this sentence, and I feel like you're going to be as well placed as anyone to complete it. It's life is ... and then finish the sentence. So I'll throw the challenge at you. Life is
short. Life is short. So I've got a quote right here, Scotty, on my desk, and it's by Nick Cave, and it says that, I'll just read you the front bit. All of our days are numbered. We cannot afford to be idle. To act on a bad idea is better than to not act at all, because the worth of the idea never becomes apparent until you do it. And that continues that it's, I suppose it's a poem or it's a mission statement, but the premise of it is that we don't have much time. People don't understand that. People who have lost other people might understand it a bit better than others, but life is really, really short. Days are short. Weeks disappear like that. And you can quite easily get caught in a rut of not understanding your purpose and who you are. So just get after everything. That's my main mission now. Just take advantage of every opportunity and do it without apologies and do it with unbridled passion. That's one of the biggest learns that I've had. Be enthusiastic and unapologetic in everything that I do moving forward. And it's just that thought process alone has just absolutely changed my life. It's led me to brilliant organisations, and it's led people like yourself and Trev and Tim Diamond from the Cotton On Foundation, all of these people into my life that are heavily influential to me, and allowed me to be a better version of myself just by remembering that life is short.
Sean, it's a very powerful, unique, and quite an inspiring story, and a real life story. I feel like a story probably sells it short as well. What you've done with it is actually more inspiring. So that you live the life of purpose mantra, that you're in that unique position to take your worst day potentially of your life and turn it into your best, which is something that I truly admire, and the impact that that's had on so many around you. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. And from first hand, I can see that you are truly living a life of purpose. So congratulations on a life well lived.
Thanks, mate. I'm just getting started, Scotty, so let's see what we can do from this point on. Thanks for having me on the podcast too. Very exciting.
Good on you, Sean. Take care, mate.
Cheers, Scotty. Thanks, mate.
Please remember, if you're ever in need of support, reach out to Lifeline or Beyond Blue. For more inside sessions, you can find us on all of the social platforms or at lifechanger.org.au. Thanks for joining us, and here's to a life well lived. I don't think I believe, no.